The Red Sea attack happened a few months ago. Yeah, it happened a few months ago, but the impact is still significant. It has disrupted global supply chain, and when it comes to logistics, Africa is in need for it, and it has led to a lot of loss of revenue. Now we want to examine how huge this impact has been on Africa and by extension to Nigeria. Let's see what our special guest analyst will have to say to this. We're being joined by Segun Oke, who is a development finance communication expert. He's right here with us in the studio. Segun, glad to have you join us on NXT this morning.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Your first time on NXT?
No, the second time.
Oh, great. All right. Now let's look at the disruption, the attack on the Red Sea has brought to global supply chain and logistics. You're aware of how sensitive that corridor has been to looking at the trades between US and Africa. How will you describe the impact of this attack and how it has affected economic growth in Africa and then the logistics supply globally?
Okay, recently I was reading about, the Houthi militants. One of the reasons why they're attacking, the attacks are the Suez corridor through the Red Sea is because they're protesting the killing in the Gaza Strip, and they are supporting the Palestinian invasion, which is not actually the Israelis, the fault of the Israelis. But what I would say about the disruption currently with shipping and global supply chain, it can't be as bad as it was during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think the promoters, the shipping magnates are prepared for what is happening now. What is basically the after impact of what will currently happen now is that there will be more cost when it comes to insurance freights, payment insurance, marine insurance. Suppliers will have to pay more, and there will be a threefold effect on inflation. Goods will be more expensive, and there will be a longer route for transportation, since the shippers or those who are importing to Africa or to Europe will now have to take a longer route, trying to avoid the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, where those attacks are happening. So I don't think, if the pandemic was not there, like it was 2 years ago, we can say that the impact would have been very grave. But I think these proponents are now prepared for what is happening now, because it has happened before during COVID-19. So.
All right, so now that it's happening, there are some countries that are directly impacted even before it affects the world. Let's look at Egypt, for instance.
Yeah.
The use of the Suez Canal usually brings to them lots of revenue. How is it impacting Egypt?
Okay. Last week I was reading something on that. They said revenue had dropped by 67%.
67%. That's
yes.
huge.
That's huge. Yes, that's huge. That normally the global gross income was about $844 million. It had come to about $360-something million.
That's more than half.
So I don't know. It's grave. Not only a lot of things have impacted Egypt. Egypt is very close to Israel. And also the corridor where humanitarian aid passed through for through the Palestine. So they've been like a centerpiece between Israel and the Palestine. So they suffered gravely through the war between the Gaza Strip and the Israelis, and now the militants from the Houthi militants who are backed by the Iranians. So it's I think the Egyptian economy is in a lot of distress. Inflation will be in 2 digits now, and so I think I think the country will partially be in recession now because of what is happening now, based on what is happening at the Red Sea, with the militants, and also what has been happening with the war at the Gaza Strip. So it's a lot of problem for the Egyptians. Yeah.
All right. According to the chairman of the Suez Canal Authority, they talked about the traffic of shipping through that corridor has declined by 30%.
Yes.
Do you foresee alternatives being a solution here? Because out of every problem, there should also be opportunities for Africa. Do you see other routes or other routes, playing out here, and for Africa to also look at the possibilities of boycotting this corridor, which would be another opportunity to create other corridors, even if it's going to be more expensive?
But what we should look at is the effect on the bottom line. You know what I mean? So if the cost effect is going to be huge, it doesn't make sense for other avenues to be created. You know what I mean? Because this Suez Canal through the Red Sea has been a corridor that's been used for ages. So it's, I don't know if alternatives can quickly be made, you know what I mean, but from what I know, I think Africa and the Europeans are the most hit by this situation from the Red Sea, by the militaries, because a lot of those goods coming from Asia, going to Europe, coming to Africa. So I don't know measures in place, but I know that there are other alternative corridors that take longer routes, maybe an extension of up to 12 days. And you know that the more those goods stay on the Red Sea or before they get to their destination, the more cost it will incur and the more insurance it will come. But I think the triple effect on Africa will just be more inflation, more, because we are the ones who are going to suffer this effect at the end of the day, because those costs will pass on to us. You know what I mean? So what you buy for 3 naira now might be 9 naira or 12 naira. So I think it's the common man who is going to be most affected with all this that is happening.
Since shipping companies are paying more insurance premium right now, so what's the implication of this on the insurance companies? Is there time to smile to the bank?
Of course, I think it's a plus for them. I think it's a plus for them because you would ensure you must surely insure your goods. Whether it's not a risk anybody would take that those goods will just come, that nothing might happen on the way. No. You must insure your goods. So I think it's a booming time for the insurance companies. You know what I mean? For them to quickly take advantage of the opportunity.
Well, isn't it a two-way traffic? As much as people are paying premiums, will the files for claim not also increase for those who eventually something happens to the ship?
What I read is that it is only those who will still take the normal road through the Suez Canal to the Red Sea who will pay more premium for insurance now. Those who are taking alternative routes will still be able to manage the insurance premium. Again, it's only those who want to take the risk and said, okay, maybe we don't want, the waiting time will be longer, let's take the risk and see how it goes. Those are the ones who will pay more premium.
Now, let me give you the statistics, with respect to the losses being recorded by Egypt, and I would like you to react to it. Just within the frame of a few weeks in January, they've made a revenue of $428 million compared to $800 million in January 2023.
Yeah, it's comparison analysis. Yes, I saw it.
So what's the implication of this for Egypt?
Well, how do I put this now? I think there's going to be a lot of strain on their recurrent expenditure. Because I'm sure these are things that fund their recurrent expenditure, capital expenditure. So they just have to. I don't know how they are going to go through this. The company is already suffering from a lot of inflation, but somehow they will get by. But I think it's going to be a lot of effect on recurrent expenditure. Capital expenditure will not be able to be executed as swiftly as possible. I think there might be a revamp of their budget because these are exigencies I'm sure that they did not foresee coming. So I think the Egyptian economy is in quagmire.
Is there anything Egypt can do in the interim to broker peace or to join in fighting this high level? We can't even call this piracy, but this obviously looks more like terror attacks.
Well, I think Egypt on its own has been trying to broker peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis. But I think the message that President Netanyahu is trying to pass is that if we leave these people and we don't eradicate them totally, they're going to come back stronger and more forceful. But in the course of him doing this thing, a lot of humanitarian hazards have been committed. Genocide, innocent people are being killed. But you can also realize that this is actually not Israelis' fault. It is the militants who has caused this trouble. And maybe they didn't bargain for what they are getting. So I think the most country who could intercede in this is America. And you can also realize that now it is affecting how the world perceives President Joe Biden, that is not as tough as he should be. He's allowing Israel get away with so much havoc, and he should be more tough. He should take a tougher stance on the humanitarian crisis when it comes to the Gaza Strip. If America has not been able to broker peace, who are the Egyptians to do that? So that's my own thinking, you know what I mean? Because by default, the Americans are the world leaders, and they are the allies to the Israelis. And what I just see out of this is that I think the Americans just because their blind support for the Israelis is sometimes nauseating. Well, they would always support the Israelis. Maybe they're also guided by their doctrines, and they say that the Israelis are the chosen race of God, and no matter what they do, you can't fight the Israelis. In a lot of ways, it means a lot of things. But I think, directly, if you look at it, what is happening between the Egyptians, between that corridor, the Palestine, the Egypt, and it's not directly the Israelis' fault, you know what I mean? Because 1,400 of their citizens were killed. Another 200 were kidnapped by the militants from Gaza. So there have to be repercussions and consequences for every action that is being carried out.
And Egypt happens to be collateral damage.
Of course. They're just in the middle of the whole shit.
Well, where the attacks were being inspired by the fact that they wanted to make a statement as regards what's going on in Israel, between Israel and the other party. But do you see a military surveillance or intervention helping to curb the rate of terrorism or attacks in this corridor?
Is it from the Israelis? You see, from the angle of the Palestinians and the militants, or
I'm talking about the militants now, who have taken advantage of that corridor to sabotage or create economic sabotage, to make a statement in that regard. Will military surveillance help, or military intervention? Because it's always a global practice to say, okay, let's have a roundtable discussion, but somehow these people are faceless.
But you see, I think what leaders have been trying to do is not to escalate the war in the Middle East. You know what I mean? Because if tensions are escalated, is there not going to be another, is it the Third World War or the Fourth World War? So I think things are being managed now. But I think the Israelis has to allow for a Palestine state. This is the solution to all this. And I don't know why the Israelis do not want a Palestine state. Let them go. You know what I mean? Let them go. Let people get their freedom. Maybe there will be peace in the process. If a marriage is not working, they should be divorced. Amicable divorce. People should go their separate ways. It's not a do or die affair. But
in this situation, it's not as easy as you
No, I know.
Divorce, you're suggesting.
Yeah.
It's not as easy.
I know, but I think what the militants are also trying to advocate for, they want a Palestine state, totally different. They want
their sovereignty.
Yeah, they want their sovereignty, that we want to be on our own. I think if that is achieved, I think America has also proposed that to Israel, but Netanyahu is refusing that.
The two-way solution.
Yes, that the Israelis must always be in control of Gaza for security and everything, because he is thinking that if the Palestine state is totally authoritarian, they are left on their own, those people are going to be more empowered to come back and attack the Israelis. I think it is the Israeli security that is very paramount to Netanyahu, President Netanyahu.
So while Israel and the world tries to find a resolution to all of this, what will happen to trade? Already, shipping companies are going through a longer route, which has cost implications. Are there ways to manage this? Because not every country can deal with the cost implications, particularly for some items. And like you mentioned, Africa will be the ones to bear the brunt because African countries mostly are import dependent. So what should happen in terms of managing this crisis, creating substitutes for some of these products? Is it possible?
I think it just has to become very self-reliant. If we're very self-reliant, I think we'll have an alternative to what is going on. You can also see that one of the reasons why the America is funding the copper and the cobalt in DRC, Zambia, through the Lobito corridor, is to also avoid the bottlenecks that the South African creates with trade for copper and cobalt. So they've seen, and you can actually see that from the recent actions of the South Africans, they are not allies to the Americans. They are basically on the side of Russia.
With joining BRICS?
Of course, apart from BRICS, you can also see that there's also been this informal on a sustained theory that the South Africans were actually providing weapons of war to the Russians in fighting the Ukrainians. You know, which they denied anyway.
I'm happy you said unconfirmed.
Yes, of course.
But even at that, is it even a possibility?
Yes.
Does South Africa have the capacity to do so?
But you know, South African is Africa's world leader. Not Nigeria, don't deceive yourself. They're way advanced more than us. They're way more advanced. If we actually believe that we're the world leaders, we're just fooling ourselves. South Africa is so much advanced in technology. They are ahead of us in so many ways. You know, and don't also forget that the influx of the white community in South Africa has also given them an edge. You know, they are the African world leader. And you know, there's always this struggle who has the biggest economy between South Africa and Nigeria. Okay. Sometimes it's South Africa, sometimes it's Nigeria. But I think in terms of innovation and a lot of things, South Africa is ahead of us. Even the giant telecoms company in Nigeria, the number one, MTN, is a South African company.
This funding that the U.S. is committing to the African Rail Link, which is going to benefit some countries around that region, talking about Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and even Zambia. So aside the initial fund, they've already committed about $1 billion before the U.S. and some other foreign partners. So aside this initial funding, what is the plan or guarantee or financial sustainability for this project?
Okay. You know, one of the reasons why America currently takes a lot of I'm looking for the right adjective to use. They are getting very interested in supporting metal exports in the Central Africa region. It's also to counter the influence that China is having over Africa. You know what I mean? Because in a lot of ways, China is looking for ways to displace America. So those monies that Americans are committing for metal exports between the Lobito corridor, which is in Angola, through DRC and Zambia, is also to create more niche, more business with Africa. And this is not the only thing they plan to do. They plan to do similar things in other African countries. The first reason why you should understand this is because America is trying to counter the global effect and influence that China is currently having over Africa. And you can also see, I don't really, like I said before, I don't think America sees South Africa as an ally. Because if they saw South Africa as an ally, they will not be looking for alternative corridors to transmit the export of metals, creating the Lobito corridor, which is going to cost them more money. Because I know that they say there's a lot of logistics in South Africa when those things are being moved through, and those things are going to Europe, they're going to America. So I think it's a deliberate move for America to exert their influence, their continued influence in Africa. That's why they are funding some
so
of these things.
there's a lot of politics involved in this.
Yes.
But what will be the benefit for these countries economically, and even Africa, as the world moves more into energy transition?
Okay, I heard Trafigura, which is a European country, is in charge of creating these rails. And one of the biggest mining companies in DRC have signed an agreement with some European countries and America for this export. And you realize that copper and copper bars are being used as an alternative for sustainable energy. You know what I mean? Like a migration from fossil fuel to sustainable energy, to green energy and everything. So they are creating a market for this product by direct exports. You know what I mean? And they are also solving the logistics problem of how to get these things quickly to where it needs to get to. So I think it's a win-win for both Africa, Central Africa, and also America and the European countries, and also development partners like African Development Bank, AFC, and the European Union that have come together to also create joint funding with America for these alternatives.
All right.
So I think it's a win-win thing.
Maybe for our viewers to understand this or get this conversation better, can you just provide a background to the significance of this Lobito corridor and the impact this kind of investment is going to bring to all the parties that are involved, especially Africa?
Okay, the Lobito corridor is in Angola. It will go through Zambia and DRC, that's the Democratic Republic of Congo, to move this copper and cobalt to where it needs to get to, faster route. These railways are not only going to be used for just transmitting copper and cobalt, it's going to also serve as transportation between these countries, you know what I mean?
So it's boosting intra-African trade among these countries?
Yes, so it's creating seamless trade between these three countries. It's also going to provide faster sources of logistic supplies, which is not only going to be for cobalt or copper. It is just one of the reasons. So the fallout and the benefit, it's multifaceted. You know, other products are going to be moved with this Lobito corridor that America is spearheading to fund with its development partners. So I think it's a win for Africa. And it's also going to break the autonomy that South Africa, the autonomy and the influence that South Africa is having so much on the African region. You know, maybe they see themselves as the US of Africa. You know, so.
But is that really a bad thing, or is it negative, really?
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a win for Africa.
It seems like every region needs to have a champion, so to speak.
Well, a champion that means well. A champion that is not going to use their weight and their influence for their own benefit and just oppress other people. And you can also see before South Africa got where they are today, there was lots of issues with appetite that Africa fought for them and everything. And you can also see how South Africa quickly forgot about the countries that helped them get to where they are.
Nigeria particularly.
Nigeria particularly, and there was xenophobia, and Nigerians were being killed, and they wanted Nigeria to leave those countries. So, but you can see that you never can tell when you help somebody achieve what they want to get to, what is going to be the after effect of how it's going to turn out. It can either be for good or bad. We constantly have to remind them that, listen, if you're here today, it's because of the joint cooperation and effort for us to come together for you to achieve what you've achieved. So that is it.
Let's look at this project, the African Rail Link. How sensitive is this project? And then do you foresee any threat or any challenge in that corridor against this project?
Okay. like when I read about copper mining and cobalt mining in the DRC, even without the corridor that America is trying to provide, I had heard that there were a lot of issues. They were killing, women were being raped in DRC, and China had brought in a lot of confusion in trying to harness this metal resources from them. So there's a lot of effect with the DRC. And you don't forget that DRC has been a war-torn zone for a long time. So there's a lot of issues. So I think America coming in to step in would also provide a diversion to what is currently happening with China and its shenanigans with the metal exports, and provide an alternative for those miners to either go with China or go with America, whichever they see more comfortable.
That's some division.
Yes.
All right, let's look at the AFDB supporting this project. It is good that the AFDB supports to export, but let's look at also establishing production companies in Africa, because what we find is almost like a repeat of the crude oil thing in most parts of Africa.
Yeah.
One mineral is discovered, is used globally, is discovered, and there's lots of exports of the primary product from Africa.
Yes.
And then the finished product becomes so expensive that even many Africans cannot afford. So if the AFDB is supporting the export of this, on the other side, should we not also have development of the development of companies or industries that can extract this primary product for use here directly?
Yes, yes, yes. I totally agree with you. But you can also realize that when it comes to Africa, there's no sustainability. Most of our industries have been converted to churches here in Nigeria. So the naira is on a free fall. What can African Development Bank do to curb all these things that are happening? And like you said, when a natural resource is discovered in an African place, it is quickly exploited by the Americans, by the Chinese. But I think at this point in time that the Africans should be wiser so that history does not repeat itself. You know what I mean? And you have to understand that the common man like you and I, we have no say with this. The people that take the decisions about these natural resources are people at the top, at the government, who do it for self-interest. So whether you and I are in consonant with what they want to do or not, they're still going to do what they want to do. But what the leaders should do now, when they give out these natural resources to these world leaders, they should also remember to keep something aside for the rainy day. Like what Nigeria did not do, and when there was the oil boom, everybody was just jollophing. Green Revolution was forgotten. Nobody was farming anymore. And they realized that this thing only has a space after where it will go. So I think what AFDB should do in supporting Africa is also to tell them that, listen, we're going to sponsor this thing. We have partners abroad who are interested in this thing. It is compulsory that as you go through these transactions, 40% of the revenue, 50% of the revenue must be kept aside, and you must not touch these things. I think the African Development Bank or these partners, like the AFC, the European Union, must ensure and entrench that Africa keeps something aside when these transactions are.
How would that happen? Does it have to be an agreement where the funds pass through, for instance, the AFDB, and so 40% of it is domiciled? Because once it gets out, what control would they have over it?
Yes, I said that's the discussion that they must have. That's the discussion that they must have. They need to have. Because we know Africa with corruption. We know African leaders and the way they spend money. So those things will come back and they'll be enriched, and the common man will get poorer. You know, and don't forget that there are always after effects for this mining. There's erosion, you know, people are displaced, there'll be
environmental
pollution.
challenges.
So the environmental challenges, so there are always triple effects when they carry out these things. So I think the African Finance Company, the African Development Bank must come and also look at these things when they are funding these things, and they must have these discussions with these leaders, and they must insist that these things are kept apart or before those fundings can take place in the first place. That's the only way they can.
All right, let's wrap up with this. Looking at the sensitivity of this project, what kind of engagement do you think should be done with the host communities? And then looking at the activities of illegal miners and some insecurity threats that may also affect this project, what are the things that should be put in place to ensure that the issue of threat from insecurity and the activities of illegal miners in this corridor won't affect this project, and also some commitment to the host communities as well?
Okay. The world leaders who have come in and have showed interest in metal exploitation, they should also provide security. You know what I mean? They should also, this deal should come with security provision. They are the ones that should best take care of that challenges. And when it comes to benefit to the host community, corporate social responsibility should be entrenched. What is taken out should be given back. Schools should be built. Good roads should be constructed. Standard of living should be improved. There must be a ripple effect of what is being taken, put back in the community. And the best people to do this are the world leaders who have shown interest in taking these products, who are now coming in there to harvest these natural resources. So I think...
do you think it's the world leaders or it's African leaders?
Well,
because there have also been allegations of sponsor of unrest in regions like that for more exploitation.
What I'm saying is this: the world leaders must do it themselves. If you're looking at the African leaders or the companies involved to come and entrench corporate social responsibility on a full scale, you'll be deceiving yourself. Corruption will come in, siphoning will come in, due diligence will not come in. So I think they should.
I'm talking about provision of security as well and everything.
Yes, I'm saying that when it comes to the provision of security, the world bodies who are involved in this export should be involved in security provision. You know what I mean? Just the way Americans send their soldiers to countries that they have interest in. They should also send their military to DRC.
Would it be more effective if the security architecture is localized? You have people in those communities who understand the terrain and they are being engaged to police that area, looking at the sensitivity of this kind of project. And you realize most of the time when you cite this kind of project, the CSR thing is usually neglected. And so if those people are brought in from the word go, then it makes it easier. Don't you think so?
I don't agree. Take a case of Nigeria. How long have we been fighting insurgency? Regime upon regime comes in. This one promises to do what they cannot do. Have you ever been able to fight it? Local content is crap. I am looking at I'm looking at what is happening locally here, and it's not going to be different from what is happening from DRC or Zambia or Angola. Africans, when it comes to security, because of self-interest, they feel a lot. That is the angle I'm looking at it from. That if he's not working in Nigeria, that is somebody be one of the world leaders in Africa, how can he work in a war-torn zone like DRC or Zambia or Angola? It's not sustainable, and the Americans should come in and do this thing. That's what that's the way I'm looking at it. Has it worked? Or maybe you answer my question. Has it worked here in Nigeria?
No, my job on this show is to ask questions.
Okay, so.
And the reason we were pushing or asking how local participation or local security can be used is because there seem to be different interest groups here.
Yeah.
You have those of the US and that of China. Yeah. So how can they come to work together to ensure provision of security, knowing that they have different interests?
Well, I think, the Chinese and the Americans, they are world leaders, and they're also rivals. So I think that's going to be a tough discussion. But I think that they can meet at a middle point, since they have a similar interest.
Okay, with business, enemies can
so I think they'll put differences
amicable
aside.
discussions.
They'll put the differences aside to exploit what they need to exploit.
Looking at business interests.
Interest, yes, that's what.
Thank you very much, Segun Oke, for being our guest today on Early Exchange. It's been a wonderful time providing insight into the developmental issues in Africa. It's our hope, like that of every African, that this becomes really development and not a start of crisis in these countries or in the African region. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.